You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Hello, welcome to Japan Eats. I'm your host Akiko Teyama, food writer and the director of the New York Japanese Culinary Academy, which promotes a deep understanding of Japanese cuisine in America. We are broadcast live from Brooklyn, New York. This show is all about Japanese food and food culture. We see sushi at every day on the supermarket, but what is beyond sushi? We hear dashi umami sakaya, but what exactly are they? Japanese food is still a mystery for many people, and I try to demystify it in this program with good guests. My guest today is Jun Madison, who is the assistant manager at the Rice Factory New York. The Rice Factory New York is an importer, wholesaler, and retailer of premium rice. The company offers the best taste and flavor possible by fully controlling the quality of rice from farming, storing, milling, and transporting. And rice is eaten all over the world, but for Japanese people, it has particularly a special place in their hearts. In Japan, rice is treated not as a side dish, but as the main character of the meal. Also, it is a symbol of love. For example, people make rice balls for someone to express care and affection. So today we'll discuss the unique Japanese mindset about rice, why Japanese rice is unique and can offer outstanding taste, texture, and flavor, how to cook rice to maximize its deliciousness, and much more. But before we start, Japan Eats is available on Heritage Radio Network website, as well as on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify as a podcast. So please go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, whichever you listen to, and subscribe to Japan Eats. And please write a review. We really appreciate your feedback. Now, let's start a conversation with Jun Madison. Hello, Jun. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Hey. So, we have a lot to talk about because rice is such a center stage of everything in Japanese cuisine. So, first of all, to get to know you, where are you from, and what did you eat when you grew up?
So, funny enough, that's actually a hard question for me that I am actually born in upstate New York at a farm. And I actually moved to Japan when I was 4 years old. My father is American and my mother is Japanese, and they wanted me to experience both cultures. So in the US, I'm from upstate New York. And from Japan, I'm from Nagoya and Aichi Prefecture. And I actually mostly grew up eating culturally, like historical Japanese food, since my family in Japan are actually fishermen in Mie Prefecture. So we had a lot of fish to eat, and we had to pair it with a lot of traditional Japanese food. So I grew up mostly on Japanese food.
There's so much packed in a couple of sentences. I mean, Mie Prefecture fisherman, that sounds amazing. And also, Aichi Nagoya, that's like the cultural spot of food, good food, and
Mhm.
passion for food. And then you have the American background, which is very cool. You said farm. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So you joined the Rice Factory New York in 2022. So what is the Rice Factory New York and what is its mission?
So, Rice Factory New York is a company where we actually import Japanese rice as brown rice from Japan in a refrigerated container to focus on keeping the rice as fresh as possible. And we will store it in our refrigerated storage with temperature controlled and humidity controlled environment as brown rice having the outer layer protecting the rice. And we actually mill it to order. So when we receive an order, we'll mill it to your desired milling rate. So any range of rice from brown rice to white rice, we could customize that. And we will ship it immediately to you or sell it at our store or provide it to restaurants. Uh, and that's the main thing that we do. But our mission is actually to share the Japanese food culture with the world. So right now we're in New York, so we're sharing it with people in the United States. And that's our mission, is to just keep sharing Japanese food culture and hope people to love it and keep it going.
Right. And I also heard that the founder of the company originally was in Hong Kong. He was an expatriate and he was frustrated that he couldn't get the real, really premium quality rice as he could get in Japan. So, could you tell us about the history of the company as well?
Yeah, in 2009, he started actually before that, he used to sell coffee beans, but he was actually disappointed when he was in Hong Kong that he couldn't have freshly milled Japanese rice as accessible as it is in Japan, and it was something that he wanted to share with everybody. So in 2009, in Hong Kong, he started a little store where they provide freshly milled rice to their customers. And in 2011, they were like, you know what, we should share it with the rest of the world. And with opening another store in Singapore, and then did the same thing in Taiwan in 2013. And that's also a time when they realized, oh, people love it. So what we're going to do is create a hub in Hokkaido, Japan, where they can source not only rice but very good Japanese condiments or ingredients to create traditional Japanese food that does not have additives.
Mm.
So in 2013, the Waka Japan was created to actually source all these products and ship it out, export it to the world.
Mm, interesting. So I think the idea is rice, and then there's something to make the rice eating culture as a whole, including soy
Right.
sauce and other condiments.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I think it's the time to discuss that unique Japanese mindset about rice.
Mhm.
So rice is eaten all over the world, but for Japanese people, it's something special. So how important is rice for the Japanese people?
Rice is basically the heart of Japanese culture, is what I felt and what I believe in when I was in Japan throughout me growing up there. And what I noticed that it's just like, it's not just a comfort food, it's deeply rooted into our history. We've been making rice since 2,500 years ago. And that was in like samurai eras and all of those times. And it's so important to a point where we have a word called gohan, and that can mean cooked rice, but it could also mean just meal. So it's that important to us. And it actually used to, long time ago, long time ago, it used to be a currency.
Mm.
So it's really deeply rooted into the Japanese culture. And some farmers even have a spiritual connection with the rice that they grow and the land that they grow it in.
Right. Oh, that's right. Just the tax, the rice used to be used as a tax, and then your real estate values based on how much rice you can cultivate. And yeah,
Mhm.
people try to farmers try to hide it so that to reduce the
Yeah,
tax, right? Something like that. So, and
yeah.
also, when I grew up, I
Mhm,
heard that there are even seven gods in a grain of rice, and
mhm,
I was told you cannot leave any grain of rice in your bowl. So
mhm,
yeah, one time I was sitting at the table. I didn't want to finish the rice, and I was sitting there like 2 hours until I was able to finish the
mhm,
whole bowl rice. So, yeah, it's beyond just something as a staple to fill your hunger. It's something very spiritual too. So,
yeah.
um, and then by the way, a good example to showcase the
Mhm,
importance of rice in Japanese food culture, I think is Ichiju Sansai. So I'm sure
mhm.
you are very familiar with it. So what is Ichiju Sansai?
So, Ichiju Sansai basically means one soup and three dishes, is my understanding. I eaten it so many times, but it was just so common that I didn't really. I was a kid and all that, so but that actually pairs with rice. So rice isn't counted in that. You're always going to have gohan. That's
Mm,
rice in a bowl, and then you'll have a bowl of soup. It could be most of the time it's miso soup, but there's many different kinds of miso soup if you dive deep into that. And there's okazu, which is includes like one main dish, which could be cooked fish or sashimi or some sort of meat, and it will have two side dishes of combination of stir fried vegetables or tofu, or it could be another type of meat. and that will be paired with also like Japanese pickled vegetables.
Right. And also, rice is always the center. People say triangle ordered
Mhm,
eating. So if you eat
mhm,
one bite of something out of the three dishes and go back to rice and then eat another piece of food from the dishes and go back to rice. And when you repeat, eventually you're more fully satisfied because you take more time to digest and your brain gets the whole signals that you're full.
mhm.
So you don't overeat out of one hand there's a sandwich and it's so good you keep eating and too fast. So that's what I heard is a pretty good way to have keep a healthy diet. And
Right.
yeah, so and as a type of grain, Japanese rice
Mhm.
is the Japonica variety, which
Yeah.
has a distinctive characteristics. So what is Japonica rice and what is the difference between other varieties rice such as indica?
Japonica rice is from short to mid-sized grain rice that is round, thick, has sticky texture, and it also doesn't have much aroma as indica rice, and actually has to be grown in cold environments, such as like Niigata and Hokkaido, Toyama Prefecture. Those places, the Japanese rice are actually grown in higher elevated places to achieve that temperature. That's why there is shelved rice methods because it's usually at an elevated place. So yeah, it's mostly with flavor and how it looks. It's round, thick, and sticky, and chewy. It could be used in sushi. It's Italian risotto. It can be used to make onigiri too.
Mm, right. Oh, that's interesting. Right. And I heard there is a kind of starch, amylose, and
Mhm.
the more amylose get less sticky. And then
Yeah.
Japonica doesn't have much. So that's why, you can make onigiri because it's like without that
Uh,
stickiness, you cannot make onigiri. It falls apart. So that's the beauty of
yeah.
Japonica. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
Japanese people treat rice as a culinary delight. And the bowl of
Mhm.
carefully cooked premium white rice without any flavorings, condiments is something you appreciate, like a fine glass of wine, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So if you go to a fancy kaiseki restaurant, the last course, the finale of the meal is often a rice dish. So what makes
Mhm.
Japanese rice so delicious?
I believe what makes it delicious, flavor-wise to me is it has a very nice chew, and it's not something that is it's not like something you have to add flavor to as much because it has a lot of sweetness to it, or depending on which Japanese rice or how it's been cultivated, it will have a different chew, and also different kinds of sweetness, like when the sweetness hits your palate and stuff too. But I think what makes it, so delicious is the cultivation method of it. Uh, but the places that we actually source our rice from, we go there and then see the farm and talk to the people that are actually growing the rice and see how much passion they have for it and also the land. So we choose rice that's grown from, for example, one of our most popular rice variety is Nanatsuboshi and Yumepirika from Hokkaido Prefecture. The place that we source it from is called Higashikawa, and that place they have a big mountain that has such nice, clean glacier water coming down all the way to the our rice fields. So the water is so good that the people that actually live in that town, they don't have to pay any water bill because they
Mm,
just get it from the mountain. So it's rice that's grown in very, very good water. And there's no way that rice is gonna taste bad.
right. Well,
Yeah.
I'd imagine if you grow up there and you take a bath every day there, your skin gets better too.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, that's interesting, right? Because the Japonica rice is grown in um, puddle, like really literally soaked
Mhm.
in water. So water becomes very, very important in
Mhm.
affecting the whole flavors and taste of rice. Yeah, so yeah, that's interesting, right? Because the water, it's like sake is too. Sake is made of rice as
Hmm.
well. So water really determines a lot of characters of rice. Okay,
Hmm.
so we'll take a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll discuss the importance of freshness when you buy Japanese rice. So please stay with us.
Today's program is brought to you by Korin, a supplier of Japanese chef knives and restaurant supplies. Korin is proud of their Japanese culture and traditions, but they want you to know that their products are not just for Japanese restaurants. Their knives and tableware bring out the best qualities of food from every culture and fit into every restaurant from French to Pan Asian to American. And that is why they're located in New York City, where people from every country in the world come to eat. Korin's Tribeca showroom is home to the most extensive collection of Japanese chef knives in the world, including Japan. Stop by to view their exquisitely designed tableware and the rarest natural sharpening stones. They have a whole range of knife services from repair and rust removal to reshaping and realigning. Korin is dedicated to this ideal, bringing the highest quality Japanese design to your table so you can experience the unparalleled quality of Japanese craftsmanship in your home or restaurant. For more information, visit Korin.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Japan Eats on HRN Heritage Radio Network. I'm your host, Akiko Tema, and my guest today is Jun Machisan, who is assistant manager at the Rice Factory in New York. The Rice Factory in New York is an importer, wholesaler, and retailer of premium rice. Okay, so according to the Rice Factory in New York's website, rice is perishable just
Hmm.
like fruits and vegetables. What does that mean?
A lot of people think that it's a dried like food it could be used for like emergency purposes sometimes, but it's a raw food. So, for example, if you peel an apple, it starts to turn brown by oxidizing. It's the same thing with rice. The flavor starts to change over time, it dries out more, and that will affect the end result after you cook it. So, we actually try to keep it as brown rice, apple with a skin on, as long as
Mm.
possible in a perfectly maintained environment to keep it as fresh as possible. And then when we receive an order from people, that's when we finally mill the rice, peel the apple, and then get it to our customers as soon as possible.
Hmm. Right. Um, that's interesting. So, and it doesn't the old rice doesn't look different from new rice, but when you taste it, you can tell it's old and new. Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, you mentioned earlier, but how do you maintain the precious taste and flavor of the rice? Like from transportation from Japan to
Mhm.
here, what's exactly the process?
So we're extremely strict about it. So even the farmers, they'll have to, uh, after harvesting the rice, they'll have to put it in a refrigerated room until we have it shipped to us. And during that shipping process, it's also put into reefer containers, which are containers that are refrigerated, and it's refrigerated all the way from harvest and across the ocean. And then when it gets to us, it will go straight into our refrigerated and humidity controlled environment, and it will stay there until people make an order. And our milling station is actually still in that storage room. So you're milling the rice in that perfect environment too.
Wow. So, but by the way, you mentioned you milled down to what the customers want, right? So,
Yeah.
I'm sure like whole grain to completely white rice. How do
Mhm.
you, I would say, what's your favorite level personally? Because I think everybody's different. So, for you, for
Um,
example,
for me, actually, For me, it really depends on the variety of the rice. So if it's something that is softer and chewy, and has a great aroma because it's nature farmed, which is like no pesticides, not even fertilizer, grown in a great environment. With that rice, I don't want to waste the outer layer, the aroma that comes
mm,
with it. So I'll actually do around 50 to 70% milled, and that will have more aroma and flavor. And you kind of like it's like my way of appreciating that rice more. and it's also healthier too. But if it's something like sushi, depends on when I use it too, or what I use it for. If it's sushi, I will mill it 100% to the white rice. And usually that's a lot of people's favorites, but another interesting thing is that we actually do 10% and 30% milled, which it's basically you're eating brown rice, but you scratch the surface of the
Mm.
rice so the water can penetrate when you're cooking it. So the end result ends up being a little bit sweeter and softer brown rice.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
I have to
So a
try that
lot
one
of
day.
people yeah,
Mm.
a lot of people actually like to try that, and they're like, "Okay, I'm never going back to just going plain out brown rice because you have to chew harder and all that, and I can't make different dishes and stuff." But brown rice, we also have a variety that's called kamiakari, which I guess if you say it in English is like God light or yeah.
Like,
Um, but that rice is actually it has a we only sell it as brown rice because it has a special thing about it is that there's a germ where when it sprouts, it's the part it sprouts from, but that germ is 2 to 3 times bigger than the other rice
wow.
varieties. And why we only keep it as brown rice or sell it as brown rice is because we don't want to waste that quality. That's where all the great vitamins are, like vitamin E, and it has so much health benefits. So if we mill the rice, it will actually scratch that part off and you'll lose the good quality of that rice. So if you really love brown rice, that's the rice to go for.
Interesting. Yeah, like you said earlier, the texture of brown rice was kind of, challenging to me. So I never really
Mhm.
fully got into brown rice, but I really want to try, minimally polished one from your place.
Yeah.
Right. And well, you mentioned a couple different names of rice, but there,
Mhm.
I heard over the last, 200, 2,500 years or so, Japanese
Mhm.
people have cultivated about 300 varieties of rice, although only a
Mhm.
handful of these varieties are actually widely consumed. But I think sounds like there are more rice newly invented almost every
Mhm.
year. Is that what's
Oh
happening?
yeah.
Wow.
Yes, and we try to stay on top of that because there is also global warming or climate change that is affecting some of the farms in
Mm.
Japan because it has to be a cool temperature environment. And some rice, it used to be good 10, 20 years ago, but now uh, it will get heat damage and the starch levels in the grain will get unbalanced. So when you mill the rice, it actually cracks. And when
Mm.
that cracks, when you cook it, all the starch just spills out into the water and it turns into like basically like a risotto, like very mushy, starchy liquid. And it's not so ideal. So a lot of places, a lot of people in Japan are focusing on creating delicious Japanese rice that is also strong to heat. And there's new varieties that are coming out all the time that is very tasty that we want to share with people. And uh, we also have a lot of fans of our company that are saying like, "Oh, where I'm from in Japan, they started this new rice variety, and it's very good. But in the United States, you can't buy rice that is tenpiboshi is sun-dried rice.
Hmm.
So that rice is actually dried slowly we using nature instead of machines. So when you cook it, it's very even and very pristine, like super high quality rice. So it's just also very exciting for us to explore all these new rice that people are working really hard to create.
Oh, wow. So sounds like people spend more time and money on the quality. So it's like Japanese sake too, but
Hmm.
something that used to be like out of necessity, you have to grow rice, but it's more like a premium status it's gaining as well. Sounds like.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm curious, not farmers that who's developing all those new varieties, right? Because it's nice. That sounds like very scientifically developed. So who's doing
Yeah.
that? The Japanese government?
A lot of the places that are doing that, some are farmers. Like for example, the kamiakari, the god light rice that we only sell as brown rice, that actually was created by a farmer slash scientist.
Mm.
Was accidentally he found one of his rice plant growing a little bit differently, and so what he did was to expand using that rice and then also growing more of that. That's what created the new variety. But most places are colleges.
Mm.
The most recent one that caught my eye and what we're going to be selling new this year is uh, created by a university called Utsunomiya Daigaku, Utsunomiya University. So the students there actually did the research and all the experiments to create this new rice variety. In Japan, they have a name for it called Yudai, which is like something magnificent. That's what the
Mm.
name means. But in the United States, since there could be negative connotation with that name, we changed it to a different name, which we're still working on. We still haven't released it yet, but we're working on a new name for it.
So that's amazing. So there are many college labs to be able to come up with something because they can work closely with the local farmers, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. So and well, on your website, the TRF slash
Hmm.
dash ny.com. That's your the Rice Factory New York's website, and so there each rice has a chart with two axes, sticky versus smooth, firm versus soft. So that's a very interesting, you know, kind of how you categorize your preference.
Hmm.
Is that how do you? I mean, does the people look for these different criteria to pick rice? How do you pick those? I mean, it's just hard question to
It's
answer.
yeah, it's a difficult thing, but for people in Japan or Japanese people that live here, they like to know how firm it is because some people prefer harder, tougher rice that's not so sticky. They that's more satisfying to them. But some people also like very sticky, chewy, soft, sweet rice. So there's different preferences of what people desire. So that's was created first to have Japanese people be able to decide what kind of rice they like to eat because they also want to pair stuff with the rice. So some people like to eat soft and sweet rice with meat
Mm,
or at nighttime. But in the morning, they like to have something that's not as sticky with like a clear soup and stuff like that. So
mm.
there's
Yeah,
those
I
differences.
thought these are, you both are related to mouthfeel texture, right? And I really thought it was
Hmm.
a very Japanese thing too, because Japanese people talk about very often, how do you like the food? They
Hmm.
mention texture first,
Hmm.
even or first or second. And I always notice people really evaluate food by how it feels in your mouth, and then taste
Hmm.
comes first. So I really think the chart is very representative of how Japanese people think about rice, how important it is to have these texture variation. But do you think aroma is another thing you can chart, or is it too difficult?
It will be a lot of work, but I think it's also something that is interesting because what I've noticed recently is that the people that actually found us and is interested in our rice, they want to know more, and sometimes more than Japanese people. Like they'll want to know more, and it's like being like geeking out, nerding out about Japanese food, and that's awesome. Yeah, and I think if we start to do that, it won't just be the rice variety. It will also be the milling rate.
Mm.
So the aroma can really change depending on how much you mill the rice, because a lot of the aroma comes from the outer layer of the rice, which is the rice bran.
Mm,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so the you have various different kinds of rice on your website. So do you change seasonally, or what about, the rotation or something like it keeps changing over the season?
Um, so we have a lot of varieties of rice, but we source it directly from our farmers. So we don't really purposefully change it seasonally, but depending on the farmers, they could produce a lot of it. And some farmers, they can't produce a lot of it because they're focused on the quality and the land that they're using. There's a limit to how much they could make. So there are varieties that are there all year long, and there are varieties that are only there for at extreme 1 week.
Wow. So you have to fight for it. Sounds really
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, but
we
how
actually had
many?
to. Sorry, we actually had to add a restock reminder button on our website so people could be like, okay, if this comes back, I'm buying it.
Oh,
So when we
wow.
restock it, it will notify them, and it's a huge race for everybody.
Right. It's a celebration. Amazing. Yeah, but how many farms do you work with?
I can't tell you off the top of my head.
But roughly,
Um, roughly, I think 15 and 20.
so really well selected. You know them personally. I mean, like, company visits.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, this is a tricky question. What is your favorite rice personally for now, for this season?
Personally, for this season, okay. I'm a very texture person, but I also love aroma. So I think the nature farmed sasashigure from Nagano Prefecture.
Hmm. Okay.
So the reason why I love that rice so much is one, it's nature farmed. It's like you farm it without using any pesticides, so you have to pluck any other plants that likes to grow next to the rice to support them. So it's like very hands-on and it's very hard to do. But it's also from Nagano Prefecture that has like beautiful Alps
Hmm.
where I went there 2 years ago uh, during the harvest season to go help them harvest it, and it's such a beautiful place. So there's that kind of love towards that area for me, but also with sasashugure, that's a variety that is not too soft, but not too sticky. So it's like the almighty rice that you can use it for sushi. You can have it as a your main dish to have a lot of sides to pair with it, and you can use it for a lot of main dishes, and it's always going to taste good. And you can change how you mill it depending on how you're going to use it.
Mm, right. So I am looking at the website. I don't think it's on the website right now for retail um, sale, but it's a sasashigure. So we should look into whatever, pay attention to when it's going to be back, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So by the way, I heard sushi chefs look for different kinds of rice than table rice because
Hmm.
they need to have absorbent rice for
Hmm.
their beautiful made sushi vinegar and sugar, and that's the whole
Yes.
blend, right? So that's one thing we should know what is the usage for. So yeah, and your if I get a perfect bag of rice from the rice factory in New
Hmm.
York, how shall I cook it to savor its sublime taste and the flavor to the fullest?
Um, the way I like to cook it to bring out the flavor as much as possible is I use a pot called daikokunabe.
Mm.
It's a uh, it's a clay pot mixed with paddleite to be strong against heat, and it's not going to crack so easily. Um, and with that, it will actually evenly distribute the heat, so it will evenly cook the rice. Uh, so that creates a very nice evenness which with each grain. So it will have a nice high quality taste to it and texture to it. And general, a lot of people probably use a rice cooker or a normal pot. But if you're using a rice cooker, there's many rice cookers out there, but the pressurized ones are very good. It's like almost like a pressure cooker just for rice. That's the best in rice cookers, I think. But if you're using just a normal rice cooker that's not too expensive, that's not going to break your wallet, I would suggest doing the process of cold water in rice, and then you rinse that out really quick because you don't want the rice bran smell to stick to the rice at first. So the first is a
Um,
quick rinse. And then from there, you will actually very gently mix the rice without the water. And what that does is that you don't have to scrub it. If you scrub it, it actually cracks the rice and it turns into that starch hell. I will suggest just lightly mixing it, and then from there, you'll put water in, you will dump that water out again, and you will do that about 2 to 3 times until the water gets slightly white. Not, it's mostly clear, but slightly white because you want to also keep the umami flavor. You don't want to overwash it.
right. So the rinsing part gently is not washing, but the rinsing is important. But I think some rice here in this America is fortified, right? Like with some other.
Hmm.
So it doesn't apply to Japanese rice that you because you're milling at your place. So
Yeah.
it's just the
Hmm.
pure flavor and nutrition of rice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then so who's your customer at the rice factory in New York now?
Most of our sales are currently going to our retail customers, but we have such a small store right now that people that physically come to our store and buy are probably about 2 to 3% of our entire sales. But a lot of people order online from our website because sometimes that is more accessible. Plus, there's nowhere that's going to mill rice to order and ship it out. So we have a lot of customers online, a lot of customers from California and the tri state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. But I was surprised when I first started working at the rice factory that it's the most of the people that buy our rice are not Japanese.
Hmm.
So there's actually a lot of people that are Japanese food enthusiasts that find us and purchase our rice. So it's about 60 to 50% like ratio, 60% of people that are non-Japanese, and then 40% of Japanese people. We also sell rice to a lot of restaurants across the country. We also sell to restaurants in Florida, Texas, some in North Carolina, Massachusetts, and some stores in California. But our LA location is going to fully open soon, and they're going to be able to do the same service for the restaurants in California too.
That sounds exciting. So more better rice, and I heard as the number of Japanese restaurants increased from 3051 in 1992 to
Hmm.
853% growth in 30 years. So this is
Wow.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's happening. And then, of course, people get to
Hmm.
know good rice. There's a different kinds of Japonica rice. So, yeah, that's
Hmm.
interesting. So, but do you ship overseas? Because you have a lot of listeners outside of the US.
We actually do not ship overseas from our store location, but for example, Canada, we're also thinking of maybe creating a store there to mill it freshly and then provide. The reason why we want to open stores in those countries instead of shipping it is because freshness is so important to us.
Mm,
So if we mill it in New York and, for example, ship it to Europe, I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's not going to be refrigerated. It might
Right.
be exposed to rain and, different humidities. So it's important for us to provide what we are confident.
right.
So,
Otherwise, you
yeah,
negate the whole effort of shipping everything
yeah,
from.
yeah.
Right.
So we don't ship internationally, but with Canada, since it's so close to New York, we're considering starting to ship out to Canada.
Mm. Well, one day you may open a location in Europe, hopefully.
We're in the process of it actually right now,
Mm.
in London.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, that'd
in
be a
the
good
near
place.
future.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so what are your plans and dreams? It can be personal or as a company or anything else.
Personally, it's like my identity to be the bridge between United States and Japan with food culture. So I will like to continue sharing the beauties of Japanese food culture and how tasty it is and make it almost like a norm in United States where just a normal American household will just cook delicious rice with Japanese food. Like,
Mm,
oh, tonight we're having Japanese food. Like, I want that to be normal. That's my goal.
mm.
Um, and for the Rice Factory in New York, we will want to. It's basically aligned with what I, what my dreams and goals are. So,
And I think the Rice Factory New York got lucky to have found you. So, I mean, you really have a huge passion for it and you have the right knowledge and the background. So, yeah, that's amazing and exciting. So, yeah, so where can we find your updates online and on social media?
so we have an Instagram account for the Rice Factory New York, and I think it should come up if you type in at the Rice Factory New York. Um, And for me, I I have a personal account that I haven't been posting too much, but I'm thinking about it now. Um, that is at Ju- uh, June Rainfall, I think. And
Rainfall for rice growing, rainfall.
yeah, it's important.
Right. Well, actually,
Yeah.
the reason Japanese people are going to really growing really rice well is thanks to the
Mhm,
rain season. They can have
mhm.
plenty to fill the rice bottle. So, yeah, that's such a right name, and it's yeah.
Yeah.
I look forward to checking out your Instagram account. So, this June rainfall. Okay, and then
Mhm.
what's the website of the Rice Factory New York?
The Race Factory New York is www.trf-ny.com.
Mm, okay. So amazing. And keep me posted. And thanks so much for joining us today, Jim.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Yeah. So let's do another one. We have so much to discuss about Japanese rice, and I
Yeah.
love that subject.
Mhm.
All right. So, listeners, if you have any questions or comments about the show or suggestions for show topics or guests, please contact us at japaneats@heritageradionetwork.org or kikotema.com. Japan Eats is a weekly program and is always available at heritageradionetwork.org as well as on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify as a podcast. And thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.